Hello, my friends. Come closer. Find a comfortable spot. Maybe grab something to eat. Maybe even a scoop of something cold and sweet if you have it nearby. Because today, we're going to talk about something that seems so simple, so innocent, so completely harmless. Ice cream. But here is what I want you to know before we begin. The story of ice cream is not a simple story. It is not a happy story. It is a story of obsession so powerful that emperors lost their minds over it, of secrets so valuable that people were executed for sharing them, of revolutions that swirled around a frozen dessert, of hands that perfected one of the world's most beloved treats and were never, not once, given a single drop of credit. By the time this story ends, my friends, you will never look at a simple scoop the same way again. So settle in, take a breath, and let this story carry you somewhere cold and wonderful and completely unexpected. And, my friends, before we travel back through time together, if stories like this make you stop and think and see the world a little differently, please hit that subscribe button right now. Every single week, we uncover history that will leave you speechless. History that was buried, history that was stolen, history that nobody ever bothered to tell you. I would love to have you with me for every single one of those stories. Now, let us begin. We need to go back, much further back than you were probably expecting. It is the year 618 AD. The Tang dynasty is ruling China, and sitting at the very top of that dynasty, on a throne surrounded by gold and silk and the most extraordinary luxury the ancient world could offer, is Emperor Taizong. He is one of the most powerful men who has ever lived. He has armies, he has palaces, he has more wealth than most nations. He has everything that any human being could ever want. And yet, he is bored. Not the ordinary kind of bored that you and I feel on a slow afternoon. The kind of bored that only the most powerful people in history ever experienced. The kind of bored that comes from having tasted every food, experienced every pleasure, consumed every luxury that the known world could offer. So he does what powerful men do when they are bored. He issues a command. Create something new, something nobody has ever tasted, something worthy of an emperor. His people work for months, they experiment, they fail, they try again. And then, one day, they bring him something extraordinary. Frozen buffalo milk, mixed with flour and camphor, packed carefully with ice that had been harvested from the tops of the highest mountains and carried down, carefully, painstakingly, by 94 human beings. One job, one dessert. 94 human beings. One job, one dessert. The emperor takes one careful taste, and in that single moment, something happens to him that has never happened before in his entire extraordinary life. He is completely undone. He falls so deeply in love with this frozen creation that he immediately does two things. First, he declares it the most magnificent thing he has ever experienced in his entire life. Second, he declares the recipe a state secret. Anyone who shared it, anyone who taught it, anyone who whispered even a single ingredient to an outsider would be executed. That, my friends, was the first ice cream in recorded human history. And already, someone was willing to kill for it. Now, fast forward several centuries. The secret has not stayed in China. Secrets never do. They travel, they transform, they find their way into new hands in new lands, and they become something slightly different everywhere they go. By the time we reach Europe in the 1500s, frozen desserts have found their way into the kitchens of Italian nobility, and the Italians, being the Italians, have done what they always do. They have made it more beautiful, more refined, more extraordinary than anything that came before. But here is the thing, my friends. It is still a secret. Not a state secret enforced by execution this time, but a social secret. An exclusive luxury so carefully protected that only the wealthiest royal courts in Europe know it exists. The ordinary people of Europe, the farmers and the merchants and the craftsmen and the mothers, have no idea. They have never heard of it. They have never tasted it. They do not even know there is something to want. And then, in 1533, a young Italian girl named Catherine de' Medici prepares to leave Florence and travel to France to marry the future king Henry II. She brings many things with her from Italy: art, fashion, culture, influence, and one very quiet, very careful Italian chef who carries in his memory a recipe for a frozen dessert that the French royal court has never seen. For years, this secret dessert becomes the private pleasure of the French royal family, served at exclusive banquets, enjoyed behind closed doors, a luxury so magnificent that the French aristocracy hoards it the way they hoard everything, completely, selfishly, without a single thought for the people living just outside their palace walls. Until one careless evening, at one careless dinner, a royal chef makes one careless mistake. He serves it to the wrong table. Word escapes the palace, and it spreads through the streets of Paris like fire through dry grass. The people hear about this magnificent frozen treat that the royals have been hiding, that has been sitting just beyond their reach in the most beautiful kitchens in France. And the people of France, who are already hungry, already angry, already watching the royals consume everything while they have nothing, they add this to their list of grievances. It is a small thing, a dessert, a scoop of something cold and sweet. But my friends, revolutions are not started by one enormous injustice. They are started by 1,000 small ones. And the day ordinary Parisians learned that the royal court had been secretly hoarding a magnificent frozen dessert while they went hungry was one more small piece of a very large and very dangerous puzzle. Now, let us cross the ocean. It is 1744, and ice cream has arrived in the New World. And my friends, America does not fall gently in love with ice cream. America loses its mind completely. The most powerful men in the new nation become utterly obsessed, embarrassingly obsessed, obsessed in ways that history books tend to quietly skip over because it does not quite fit the serious, dignified image we like to paint of our founding fathers. Let us start with George Washington. George Washington, the father of the nation, the general, the first president, the man on the dollar bill staring back at you with that serious, unbothered expression. That man spent the equivalent of $10,000 a year, every single year, feeding his obsession with ice cream. He had special equipment imported from Europe specifically for making it. He had his staff trained in its preparation. He consumed it in quantities that would make most people genuinely concerned for his health. George Washington loved ice cream the way some people love breathing. Then there is Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson brought back from France an 18-step ice cream recipe so extraordinarily complicated that it took an entire day to prepare from start to finish. 18 steps, one day, one dessert. He served it at state dinners, he served it at private gatherings, he served it whenever he possibly could, because Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, architect of American democracy, was completely powerless in the presence of a good frozen dessert. And then there is Dolly Madison, the wife of President James Madison, a woman famous for her elegance and her grace and her extraordinary skill as a hostess. She served ice cream at a White House state dinner in 1813. And my friends, the accounts from guests at that dinner describe something remarkable. Grown men, senators, diplomats, military generals who had survived wars and battles and the worst that the world could throw at them, nearly wept at a dessert. That is the power of ice cream in early America. But now, my friends, I need to stop, because there is a part of this story that nobody tells, a part that gets quietly skipped over in the cheerful history of America's great ice cream obsession. Every single scoop that George Washington consumed in those quantities that cost him $10,000 a year was made by enslaved hands. Every step of Jefferson's 18-step recipe, the churning, the packing, the careful layering of ice and salt and cream, was performed by enslaved people. The magnificent ice cream centerpiece that reduced those White House dinner guests to tears was crafted by men and women who were not free. And here is what makes this the most painful part of the entire story. The enslaved people who worked in these kitchens were not unskilled laborers simply following instructions. They were masters. They understood the chemistry of freezing before the word chemistry was even commonly used. They knew exactly how much salt to add to the ice to bring the temperature down precisely enough. They knew how long to churn. They knew how to fold flavors into cream in ways that their enslavers could not replicate without them. They were artists, and they practiced their art every single day for people who owned them, in service of a nation that told itself stories about freedom and equality while treating human beings as property. Their names are not in the history books. Their recipes, many of them, were claimed by others. Their contribution to one of America's greatest food traditions was simply taken, without credit, without acknowledgement, without even the basic dignity of being remembered. My friends, we have traveled a long way today, from a Chinese mountaintop where 94 servants carried ice for one emperor's obsession, to the kitchens of European royal courts where a recipe was guarded like a state secret, to the grand dining rooms of a new nation where powerful men were reduced to childlike wonder by a frozen dessert, and to the quiet, invisible hands that made all of it possible and were never thanked. I want to leave you with one thought. The next time you hold a scoop of ice cream, whether it is in a paper cup on a hot afternoon or a careful bowl on a special evening, I want you to feel the weight of it. Not just the cold, not just the sweetness, the weight of 1,400 years of human history sitting in that small, simple scoop. The obsession of emperors, the secrets of royal courts, the tears of grown men at White House dinner tables, and the skilled, invisible hands that made it all real and were never once told, "Well done." That is the history of ice cream, my friends. And now, you know it. If this story moved you, if it made you see something familiar in a completely new way, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to keep traveling through history like this, through the stories that were buried and forgotten and deliberately left untold, I will be here every single week, waiting for you, with another story worth knowing. Take care of yourselves, my friends. And maybe tonight, treat yourself to a scoop. You have absolutely earned it.